Hi, I'm Kate Fowle. I'm the new director of ICI, Independent Curators International, which is an organisation based in New York but that organises exhibitions and events nationally and internationally. And I'm here with Michael Connor, who is the curator of an exhibition called The New Normal, which was a show that opened first at Artist Space about a year ago. And it's gone to a number of venues across the US and abroad since. And we've met together to talk about what's happened a year on from the show starting. Because as somebody who's just started at this organisation, I think it's really interesting to look at this show that is around a very kind of specific theme as a way of kind of imagining when exhibitions turn and move around, what happens a year on from the beginning time and how do the curators feel about it. So it'd be great to learn a little bit more about what the new normal is and what your thoughts are today, a year on from starting it.
Yeah, I think, so the new normal was initially organized around the theme of privacy, and in particular it was inspired by shifts that had happened both in technology and in sort of in politics over the early years of this millennium that somehow led to a renegotiation of what people thought of as private, partly because we now all have camera phones in our pockets and social networking profiles, which mean that many parts of our lives that were previously hidden are now subject to public view. Is that my phone or someone else's? And the other element of it, of course, is the political shifts that have happened, particularly since 9/11, which have led to greater government role over our private information and private data.
And it feels like from 2008 to now, there's been a huge shift in privacy. Do you think that that's in what it means?
Well, I think that the heroic phase of this shift in privacy is over. Now it's sort of we've kind of gotten used to the idea that that privacy has gone from something that we could take for granted to it being something that we have to renegotiate on a daily basis around all of these changes. So there does seem like there's been a kind of people have been growing accustomed to it, and people have been figuring out strategies for dealing with this shift in their own private lives.
What made you interested in the idea of an exhibition, i.e. introducing artist perspectives into this whole conversation?
Well, I think so it's always a bad idea, isn't it, to curate an exhibition around a theme that's like really contemporary and really on people's radar at a particular moment in time, and then to expect that exhibition to continue on for another 2 years. So, I always conceived of the exhibition as a kind of history or a time capsule of a particular moment in which things had gotten very strange and changed rapidly. And I still sort of see it in that way. Clay Shirky in his essay in the exhibition catalog talked about how it's going to be very difficult to explain this moment in time to future generations. And I like to think of my exhibition as being something that might help in that process, especially since it's bringing together artists' works around this theme. And I sort of see artists as being especially sensitive to these kinds of changes and reflecting them in their work.
And they maybe have a freedom of kind of looking at a subject in a completely different way to the way that like any other kind of blogs or
to the prevailing narrative.
Yes, exactly. But it's really interesting to think of how an exhibition can be a kind of can capture a moment in time and a kind of zeitgeist that comes together. But I'm wondering, is there a new normal now, or is it that the new normal is just like from a period of time?
Well, I suppose people use the words "the new normal" when there's some sort of fundamental shift that changes their expectations of what they'll experience in their everyday lives. And certainly if people were to use that term now, and they do, I think they would be doing it around the financial crisis rather than around issues of privacy. And what's sort of interesting to me is that the financial crisis is sort of wrapped up in this theme in a way. Because one of the parts of the exhibition that I think was particularly successful was the works that dealt with the theme of political transparency, or with celebrity transparency, or with the idea that the rich and powerful are able to protect their privacy while the rest of us are not.
Definitely choice.
But that's actually not exactly true. They are subject to the same shifts that the rest of us are. And so I'm interested in the financial crisis because it seems to me that there has been an effort on the part of a lot of the people that were responsible to conceal their own involvement in the financial crisis. And I'm curious about whether they will be able to continue to do so, or whether this shift in privacy will mean that we'll have a greater insight into what's really happened.
So it's almost as if it's not about, we've kind of accepted the fact that privacy means something completely different now to the way it used to. And it's now about transparency of whose privacy is protected and who isn't, or something around that, and the way that artists maybe have a kind of way of looking at that.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, in a way, the financial crisis is the ultimate test of whether it is possible to preserve privacy.
Right.
Because if you are Bernie Madoff, are you able to preserve this like veil of secrecy around the most ultimate kind of taboo in our society, which is money?
Mm.
And I'm also sort of interested in how these kind of really centralized bits of data that sort of reside in data centers around this city and elsewhere, how they kind of have this impact on so many things around the world, you know.
I was going to say, 'cause is it a US thing, or is it national, is it international?
Well, it's international, isn't it? But we're getting one of these from the Kunat Gallery. But I'm interested in how, like, when the financial crisis hit, you were hearing things about how indigenous communities that relied on the indigenous art market for support were suddenly really hard hit. Their economic lifeline was cut. And I was also reading about, as part of the press around Slumdog Millionaire, I was reading about the story of one of the Mumbai slums and how a guy that was running a video game arcade was unable to sustain his arcade because of the financial crisis, even though he was, charging like really small amounts of money to people in this slum that would somehow seem far removed from the data center of New York. So I'm interested in how it's sort of a similar dynamic of the control of data and information at play in both the theme of privacy and the financial crisis. And with that in mind, I have come here hat in hand, hoping to shift this exhibition around somehow and launch a new normal sometime this fall at a forthcoming venue. And Kate has agreed to this new strategy, but the only problem is that I don't know exactly what we're going to do. So if there's anyone out there that can help in suggesting approaches for how the new normal can be reconfigured.
The new normal?
Yes, with artists' work that deal with economic transparency and financial transparency. I would be open to suggestions.
Fantastic. Let's see what happens.
Hopefully something.